What if the drama unfolding between Israel and Iran didn't begin in the dark corridors of today's missile silos but inside halls glittering with gold? What if the roar of tanks is only the distant echo of an era when Persia's marble columns sparkled beneath torchlight, and Israel's singers filled the courts with psalms of thanksgiving? Imagine a time before sanctions, before red alert sirens, before world leaders rattled sabers on television. A time when two ancient peoples, Israel and Persia, stood wrapped in heavenly favor, holding promises so bright they nearly blinded the angels assigned to guard them. Picture it, Jerusalem, newly liberated from Babylon's chain. Streets once choked with rubble now bustle with builders shouting orders, lifting timbers, setting the first stones of the second temple. Levites rehearse songs of ascent, their voices rising like incense above a city reborn. Hope crackles in the air like cedar on a brazier. Goldsmiths hammer fresh lampstands. Families who once wept by the rivers of Babylon laugh around bread ovens, savoring freedom's taste. This is Israel's high-tide riches of covenant, riches of purpose, riches of possibility. Now swing east, beyond the sun-baked deserts, over the Zagros mountains, the royal capital of Susa gleams. Persians call Cyrus king of kings, and for good reason. His empire stretches farther than any mapmaker can ink before borders shift again. Yet Cyrus, clothed in purple so deep it drinks torchlight, does the unthinkable. He signs a decree releasing Jewish exiles, funds their temple, and sends them home with wagons stacked full of silver and cedar. Historians chalk it up to political calculus. Prophets know better. They hear Yahweh's whisper in Isaiah, "I call you by name, though you do not know me." Cyrus may wield the scepter, but God guides the hand. For a moment, heaven and earth seem in tune. Persian coffers finance Hebrew worship. Priests lift prayers for the empire that paid their passage. Old men who thought they would die in captivity run fingers across Jerusalem's stones, tears carving rivers through beards. Children chase doves between half-built walls, shouting verses they barely understand. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. To the untrained eye, it is merely diplomacy. To the discerning, it is divine choreography, riches upon riches, glory layered on glory. But look closer. In corridors where eunuchs gossip and counselors bow, jealousy coils. Some officials bristle that foreign captives receive royal funds. Scrolls rustle with plots. Whispers slither beneath banquet tables. Why honor a people whose God toppled our idols? Cyrus ages, and younger nobles eye the throne. In Jerusalem, artisans argue over blueprints while profiteers cut corners with cheap mortar. A hairline fracture appears in the marble floor of prosperity, almost invisible but widening. Reader, can you feel it? The stories seem stretch. Riches are heavy, and the weight begins to crack foundations. Celebration papers over pride. Alliances mask unresolved enmity. Somewhere in the unseen realm, the Prince of Persia, and yet on the surface, the party rages. Susa hosts feasts so lavish poets can't find adjectives big enough. Peacocks strut beside ivory thrones. Harpists play songs learned from captive Hebrews. Notes mingling Persian melody with Zion's hope. Back in Jerusalem, high priests parade investments stitched with gold threads funded by the very empire that once crushed them. Prophecy and politics appear married, their honeymoon bright as sunrise. Pause here. Freeze the frame. This is the zenith, the top of the arc where riches gleam brightest, moments before gravity remembers its job. It is the glittering prelude to a plunge no one expects. Tomorrow's ashes lounge in today's throne rooms. The same silver coins paying for temple pillars will one day jingle in the purses of traitors. The parchment that freed Israel will gather dust while darker edicts sharpen daggers. Glory, unchecked, can rot. Wealth, unguarded, can twist. Even divine favor demands stewardship, or it slides through careless fingers like desert sand. So, let your heart linger in this fragile brightness. Listen to Levites tuning harps beside half-finished walls. Hear Persian courtiers toast to world peace while masking envy behind jeweled goblets. Smell cedar beams freshly cut from Lebanon, stacked high in Jerusalem's courtyards, waiting to become holy rafters or funeral pyres of expectation if hearts grow cold. Because sooner than a generation can recite the Shema without stumbling, robes will tatter, gold will tarnish, and the singing will choke on smoke. The riches will tumble toward rags. The descent has not yet started, but every epic fall is seated in a careless triumph. And if you watch closely, you can already see prophecy leaning on the banister, ready to descend the grand staircase and announce that the feast is ending. We stand at the story's balcony, gazing over shimmering cities, unaware that the floorboards creak. Today feels eternal. Tomorrow holds the reckoning. The first act concludes here, with Israel and Persia cloaked in favor, their futures braided like silk. But gravity waits. and so does betrayal. And so does the serpent who remembers Eden and hates when promise prospers. The riches glisten now, so bright they make angels shield their eyes, yet every starry night eventually sighs into dawn. And every golden age must test whether the gold owns the people or the people steward the gold. Hold that tension. Memorize the taste of honey cakes served in Susa. Trace the outlines of gleaming temple stones, because in the very next chapter, cracks will widen, crowns will slip, and robes will fray. Riches are glorious, yes, but they are also fragile, and the fall from a jeweled throne is a long, echoing plunge into dust. Enlightened rule begins sharpening ink knives, drafting legislation to protect national interests, and the Prince of Persia, the unseen power Daniel once confronted, fans these papers like coals, coaxing them to flame. Across the desert, Jerusalem's elders sense cold wind in their bones. Tradesmen complain of tariffs that sting like scorpions, supply chains knot, temple pillars stand half-sheared, cranes idle, children tug Father's sleeves. When will we finish God's house? Fathers mumble promises thin as parchment. The sparkle in their eyes dims to dull resignation. Riches that once spilled like Jordan floods now recede, leaving mud-cracked banks and questions. Meanwhile, Haman visits King Xerxes. The throne room glitters, but the monarch looks weary beneath a diadem heavy with legacy. Haman bows low, voice a velvet blade. Your Majesty, there is a people dispersed among your provinces. Their laws differ, their loyalties drift. Permit me to purge the threat for the empire's peace. He slides a scroll across jade inlay, a decree of total annihilation. Attached is a bribe so large even the king's skeptical brow arches. Xerxes sips wine, nods once, and presses his signet ring into wax. The ring that once released exiles now condemns them. Riches transmogrify into ransom, freedom into a noose. Couriers mount royal horses, hooves thunder through Persia's dusty highways. Edicts flutter behind them like black wings. In every province, city gates creak open at dawn to reveal identical posters. On the 13th day of Adar, let every citizen slay the Jews and plunder their goods. Merchants blanch, neighbors trade uneasy glances. Some sharpen blades, others hide suns. Fear walks the streets in daylight. Messages reach Jerusalem last, borne by exhausted writers whose faces mirror the decree's terror. Scrolls nailed to market stalls silence vendors min haggle. Mothers clutch infants. Craftsmen drop chisels that ring like funeral bells. The laughter that once floated above rebuilding stones sinks into stunned stillness. The riches are gone now, turned to dust in a single proclamation. Rags of dread flutter where banners of hope once flew. Night over Zion thickens. Stars glitter indifferently while prayer meetings multiply. Sackcloth rustles where priestly robes once dazzled. Ash smudges foreheads. Wails mingle with wind. Mordecai in Susa tears garments, sprinkles dust upon his head, and stations himself at the palace gate. Keening, Esther behind the silkscreens receives the news and feels her pulse pound like ram's horns. The queenly crown suddenly weighs 1,000 talents. Can you hear the fall? Riches tumble, light dims, and every corridor that echoed with praise now swallows echoes of panic. It is the pivot in the arc prosperity's mirror shattering into shards of peril. Yet even as fear tightens its grip, prophecy presses closer. Because rags, in God's economy, are never the last chapter. They are the loom on which redemption will be spun. So ends the second act, a kingdom gilded now rusting, a people rescued now targeted, a scroll of freedom flipped to a warrant of death. The next chapter will open not with harps but with hushed strategy, not with gold but with fasting dust, when a hidden queen must decide whether her own riches are worth the risk of embracing rags for the sake of a doomed nation. When silk turned to sackcloth, dawn crawls over Susa in grim silence. The purple banners that once danced on palace walls now hang limp, as though they too are fasting. Inside her perfumed chambers, Esther wakes with the usual hush of velvet slippers and eunuch whispers, but something is off. Alarm tints every servant's bow, platters arrive bare, the morning harpist never appears. Silk sheets feel suddenly obscene against skin that prickles with dread. A scroll lies on a lacquered table, the ink still glossy. Mordecai's message: do not imagine that you, in the king's house, will escape any more than all the Jews. 12 lines of urgent script, but it is the final sentence that strikes like a hammer. Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? The words surge through Esther's veins, knocking the crown askew. For the first time, she feels how fragile gold can be, how quickly it morphs from honor to handcuff. Beyond the lattice windows, the city stirs. Posters declaring the massacre flutter on every gate. Armorers do brisk business. Market gossip circles like carrion crows. I heard Haman himself paid for this decree. They say we can keep whatever we seize. Greed is a ready accomplice to genocide, and rags grow teeth when promised robes. Esther's heart pounds. What am I but a sliver of favor in a storm of hatred? She paces polished floors until the tiles blur, recalling childhood prayers whispered in a language the palace considers foreign. Those prayers taste of exile and hope, two flavors she had nearly forgotten in the sugary wine of royal privilege. She orders attendants to summon Hathach, the trusted messenger. Go, she breathes, voice tight as bowstring. Tell Mordecai to gather every Jew in Susa. Tell them to fast for me, no food, no water, 3 days and nights. I and my maids will do the same. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law. If I perish, I perish. The command ricochets through side corridors. Maids accustomed to scenting hair with myrrh now sprinkle ash instead. Perfume boxes snap shut. Sackcloth replaces satin. The queen's wardrobe, a rainbow of imported dyes, hangs untouched, mute witnesses to a heart exchanging riches for rags. When silk turned to sackcloth, dawn crawls over Susa in grim silence. The purple banners that once danced on palace walls now hang limp, as though they too are fasting. Inside her perfumed chambers, Esther wakes with the usual hush of velvet slippers and eunuch whispers, but something is off. Alarm tints every servant's bow. Platters arrive bare. The morning harpist never appears. Silk sheets feel suddenly obscene against skin that prickles with dread. A scroll lies on a lacquered table. The ink still glossy. Mordecai's message: do not imagine that you, in the king's house, will escape any more than all the Jews. 12 lines of urgent script, but it is the final sentence that strikes like a hammer. Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? The words surge through Esther's veins, knocking the crown askew. For the first time, she feels how fragile gold can be, how quickly it morphs from honor to handcuff. Beyond the lattice windows, the city stirs. Posters declaring the massacre flutter on every gate. Armorers do brisk business. Market gossip circles like carrion crows. I heard Haman himself paid for this decree. They say we can keep whatever we seize. Greed is a ready accomplice to genocide, and rags grow teeth when promised robes. Esther's heart pounds. What am I but a sliver of favor in a storm of hatred? She paces polished floors until the tiles blur, recalling childhood prayers whispered in a language the palace considers foreign. Those prayers taste of exile and hope, two flavors she had nearly forgotten in the sugary wine of royal privilege. She orders attendants to summon Hathach, the trusted messenger. Go, she breathes, voice tight as bowstring. Tell Mordecai to gather every Jew in Susa. Tell them to fast for me, no food, no water, 3 days and nights. I and my maids will do the same. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law. If I perish, I perish. The command ricochets through side corridors. Maids accustomed to scenting hair with myrrh now sprinkle ash instead. Perfume boxes snap shut. Sackcloth replaces satin. The queen's wardrobe, a rainbow of imported dyes, hangs untouched, mute witnesses to a heart exchanging riches for rags. Across town, Mordecai receives the reply. His tears dry into resolve. Street by street he rallies the faithful. Carpenters, scribes, bakers, mothers, infants, and entire people drops to its knees. Shop stalls close, bread ovens cool. The richest merchants fold robes over heads and sink into dust beside the poorest beggars. No one notices status when death's shadow equalizes all. For 3 days the city moans like a wounded animal. Haman hears rumors of this mass mourning and sneers, mistaking grief for weakness. He visits the gallows rising in his courtyard, 75 feet of timber reaching into saffron sky, and imagines Mordecai dangling like a trophy. Each hammer blow sounds to his pride like a drumroll of destiny. Day 1. Esther kneels on a woven mat, stomach twisting with emptiness. She has never fasted this long. Hunger she didn't know existed awakened. Food, yes, but also the hunger to live, to wield influence safely, to keep her secret. Each desire begs for attention. She offers none. She whispers psalms instead. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord. Outside her chamber, eunuchs whisper that the queen is unwell. They have no category for voluntary deprivation. Day 2. Jerusalem, 800 miles away, mirrors Susa's agony. News of the edict has reached the Judean hills. Builders abandon scaffolds. Priests collapse at the altar. From the partially built temple a dirge rises, minor keynotes echoing through unfinished courts. They, too, fast. They, too, remember that Cyrus's generosity has decayed into Xerxes's indifference and Haman's hate. Riches have slipped into rags, and the remnant feels the cold wind of extinction. Yet in the invisible realm, fasting thunders louder than armies. Angels rally over Persia's skies. wings clashing with the prince who once delayed Daniel's prayer. Demonic powers snarl as incense of intercession blinds their sightline. What looks like weakness on earth is warfare in heaven, and every rumbling stomach is a cannon firing toward the throne of God. When riches recoiled and rags rose, a hush as deep as ocean trenches settles over the banquet hall. Candles flicker like nervous witnesses, their tiny flames mirrored in goblets brimming with Shiraz red wine. King Xerxes reclines on a couch embroidered with golden griffins, wondering why his beloved queen has summoned him twice. Haman sits opposite, robes immaculate, beard groomed, but pulse hammering against proud ribs. No court musician dares strum, no servant dares breathe too loud. All creation seems to lean closer, eager for one sentence to crack the silence. Esther inhales. It is the deepest breath she has ever taken, heavy with exile memories, light with faith's helium. Her voice is calm but carries the weight of nations. If I have found favor in your eyes, O king, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. That is my petition. And spare my people. That is my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. Xerxes jolts upright, wine sloshing onto rugs worth a province's tribute. His gaze darts from Esther's steady eyes to Haman's suddenly ashen face. Who is he? Where is the man who has dared to do such a thing? Esther turns, not with wrath, but with a surgeon's precision, and points. This adversary and enemy, is this vile Haman. Haman's riches rupture in a heartbeat. Silk feels like chains, rings like shackles, the ground sways, oxygen thins. He gropes for words, but terror jams every syllable in his throat. The same tongue that drafted genocide now sticks like tar. Xerxes rises, fury boiling louder than cymbals. He storms from the hall into the royal gardens, hands clawing the air for justice he cannot yet articulate. Courtiers scatter like startled quail, unsure whether to follow or flee. Inside, dread swirls. Haman lunges toward Esther, collapsing onto the couch where she sits. He grasps the edge of her garments, sobbing, "Please, have mercy. I was deceived by ambition. Spare my life." But from a distance, it looks like an assault. Xerxes re-enters. He sees Haman sprawled across the queen's couch and roars, "Will he even violate the queen while she is with me in the house?" Guards pounce. The veil of royal favor slides from Haman's head like a decapitated crown. When memory became armor. The 14th of Adar dawns bright the next year, clear skies, crisp air, drums echoing across rooftops. Children chase each other in lion-masked costumes, laughing as they reenact the downfall of Haman. Everywhere pomegranates burst on platters, sweetening every corner of the capital. From Susa to far-flung provinces, the word Purim now means, "We survived." Yet beneath the music and honeycakes, Mordecai hears another rhythm, quieter, older, the steady tick of covenant history that always turns celebration into testing. After sunrise, Mordecai climbs palace steps to the archives. Torchlight flickers over cedar shelves stacked floor to vault with clay tablets, decrees, and war logs. The scroll of Haman's edict still lies here, creased, blood spattered from the battle that followed. Beside it rests the counter-decree, edges gilded where tears sealed the ink. Mordecai binds them together with scarlet cord and stamps a single word across both, "Remember." When gold became grief, bronze helmets glitter like new-minted suns as Alexander's armies pour through Persia's mountain passes. Susa's emerald walls fall without a clang, gates swing open in stunned surrender. To most citizens the transition feels theatrical rather than tragic, parades instead of sieges, speeches instead of swords. Greeks speak of enlightenment, gymnasiums, commerce. Riches, it seems, have merely traded accents. In Jerusalem, Alexander himself strides up Mount Zion. Legend says the high priest, robes billowing, breastplate gleaming, meets him with the scroll of Daniel foretelling a goat conquering a ram. Whether history or Hosanna, the optics stun the world. Zion welcomes the West. Greek architects soon draft marble colonnades for the upper city, merchants replace shekel weights with drachmas, scholars translate Torah scrolls into polished Koine Greek. At first the change tastes like wine, libraries bloom, trade caravans swell, and Jewish youths win foot races in newly built stadiums. Mordecai's grandchildren joke in Hebrew but debate in Greek. They call it progress, purists call it peril. Yet gold coins jingle louder than warnings. Rivka's eldest son, Eliar, joins the gymnasium at Antioch on the Orontes. He shaves his covenant curls, adopts a Hellenic name Elias, and boasts of discus records. During Purim he still eats honey cakes, but he laughs at masks. That was political, mother. We live in an age of ideas, not decrees. Rivka hides tears behind lamplight, polishing Esther's ring like a worry stone. In Susa, now a Greek satrapy, scrolls of Esther slide further back on dusty shelves. Philosophers quote Aristotle, no one cites psalms at symposiums. The story that once armored souls against genocide becomes bedtime folklore. Forgetfulness sharpens the unseen prince's dagger. Decades whirl. Alexandrian empire fractures like a clay urn at Ptolemy's in Egypt, Seleucids in Syria. From the Seleucid line rises Antiochus IV, self-titled Epiphanes, God manifest. His coronation drips with theatrical splendor, ivory chariots, elephants draped in purple, altars smoking to Zeus. To finance pageantry he bleeds provinces with new taxes. To forge unity he swings a heavier hammer, cultural homogeneity. Many tongues, one voice, his edicts decree. Jerusalem at first shrugs until soldiers march into the temple with pig intestines and Zeus statues. Priests drop censers in horror as hooves clatter on polished limestone. Within hours the altar of burnt offering turns into a spit for swine. Gold vessels, once shimmering with holiness, crimson with abomination. Riches melt into grief. When gold became grief, bronze helmets glitter like new-minted suns as Alexander's armies pour through Persia's mountain passes. Susa's emerald walls fall without a clang, gates swing open in stunned surrender. To most citizens the transition feels theatrical rather than tragic, parades instead of sieges, speeches instead of swords. Greeks speak of enlightenment, gymnasiums, commerce. Riches, it seems, have merely traded accents. In Jerusalem, Alexander himself strides up Mount Zion. Legend says the high priest, robes billowing, breastplate gleaming, meets him with the scroll of Daniel foretelling a goat conquering a ram. Whether history or Hosanna, the optics stun the world, Zion welcomes the West. Greek architects soon draft marble colonnades for the upper city, merchants replace shekel weights with drachmas, scholars translate Torah scrolls into polished Koine Greek. At first the change tastes like wine, libraries bloom, trade caravans swell, and Jewish youths win foot races in newly built stadiums. Mordecai's grandchildren joke in Hebrew but debate in Greek. They call it progress, purists call it peril. Yet gold coins jingle louder than warnings. Rivka's eldest son, Eliar, joins the gymnasium at Antioch on the Orontes. He shaves his covenant curls, adopts a Hellenic name Elias, and boasts of discus records. During Purim he still eats honey cakes, but he laughs at masks. That was political, mother. We live in an age of ideas, not decrees. Rivka hides tears behind lamplight, polishing Esther's ring like a worry stone. In Susa, now a Greek satrapy, scrolls of Esther slide further back on dusty shelves. Philosophers quote Aristotle, no one cites psalms at symposiums. The story that once armored souls against genocide becomes bedtime folklore. Forgetfulness sharpens the unseen prince's dagger. Decades whirl. Alexandrian empire fractures like a clay urn at Ptolemy's in Egypt, Seleucids in Syria. From the Seleucid line rises Antiochus IV, self-titled Epiphanes, God manifest. His coronation drips with theatrical splendor, ivory chariots, elephants draped in purple, altars smoking to Zeus. To finance pageantry he bleeds provinces with new taxes. To forge unity he swings a heavier hammer, cultural homogeneity. Many tongues, one voice, his edicts decree. Jerusalem at first shrugs until soldiers march into the temple with pig intestines and Zeus statues. Priests drop censers in horror as hooves clatter on polished limestone. Within hours the altar of burnt offering turns into a spit for swine. Gold vessels, once shimmering with holiness, crimson with abomination. Riches melt into grief. When rags rose higher than gold, dawn leaks over Jerusalem like spilled honey. Olive leaf silhouettes quiver against pale sky. A Roman seal hangs shattered on a stone rolled away. Inside, folded linen gleams where death once ruled. Angels perch where soldiers fled, and resurrection hums through garden air like distant thunder. Riches, Caesar's coins, Herod's palaces, Pilate's rings fly powerless outside the tomb they could not keep shut. Rags of burial cloth now crown the king of life. Mary of Magdala runs, breath sharp in cool dawn, words tumbling between sobs and song. I have seen the Lord. Disciples blink disbelief, but grave-damp linens proclaim what politics cannot. Riches are no match for an empty grave. Fear melts into wonder. Behind locked doors the risen Christ breathes peace, and fishermen receive a kingdom no senate can veto. 40 days later, on a windswept hill, He ascends beyond Cloudvale splendor, leaving no golden statue, only a promise: you will receive power. The empire's marble still gleams in valleys below, but a greater architecture begins, built of living stones, mortared with spirit fire. Pentecost crackles, rushing wind rattles shutters, tongues of flame crown praying exiles. Peter, once draped in fisherman's sweat, now roars gospel thunder at Passover pilgrims: this Jesus, whom you crucified, God has made both Lord and Messiah. 3,000 hearts ignite, trading sin-stained rags for robes of righteousness. No treasury funds this revival, just broken bread, shared homes, and unschooled men bearing uncontainable joy. Clay jars brim with glory. Alarmed, the Sanhedrin bribes guards, jails apostles, commissions Saul to crush the sect. Saul rides north with arrest warrants like swords, but on Damascus road heavenly light outshines imperial glory. He falls, blinded by truth, rises bearing scars that outpreach scrolls. Riches of pedigree, learning, and power he now calls dung, choosing tent-making rags to spread news Caesar can't censor. Nero later lights gardens with martyr flames, draping himself in silk while believers sing beneath pyres. Yet every death plants seeds Rome can't uproot. Catacombs echo with hymns, amphitheaters witness courage that makes lions hesitate. Wealth screams, weakness wins. Constantine lifts the cross onto banners, persecutions cease, basilicas bloom. Marble colonnades echo psalms instead of pagan odes. It feels like victory, but memory warns, riches can seduce where swords failed. Soon bishops debate prestige, emperors meddle in creeds, and the church that thrived barefoot now stumbles on jeweled sandals. Councils guard doctrine, yet forget the poor. The Prince of Pride, exiled at Calvary, rebrands in cathedrals. Even so, rags refuse extinction. Monks copy scripture by candlelight. Missionaries trek icy passes. Slaves sing spirituals that crack plantation walls. Whenever wealth dulls witness, God digs wells in wilderness, sending revival through people the powerful dismiss. Gutenberg's press splashes ink across Europe. Luther's hammer echoes like Judah's. Common tongues reclaim gospel gold. Empires shift, Ottoman crescents, Soviet stars, Nazi swastikas. Each tries Haman's script. Each finds gallows built for truth become their own undoing. Underground believers in Iran, China, Siberia clutch tattered pages, proving again that clay jars carry treasure kings cannot confiscate. From gardens of graves to gates of glory, the story has never been about marble or money, missiles or monarchs. It has always been about a God who trades his crown for thorns so that beggars may wear crowns of life. Riches fall, rags rise, and the gospel marches on. Watch, pray, remember.